let's just do a little icebreaker. Goj, what have you been up to, man? It's been like 3 weeks since we did a podcast episode or something like that.
It has been a while. It was like 3 weeks, and then like 2 weeks before that, we skipped a week or two after the Z-Laner episode, which was a certified banger for sure. I had a blast with that one. But no, I've been casting a ton of events. January was the biggest month I've ever had casting. I did like 9 Warzone events that month, and all were like fairly large events. I'm literally less than 25 grand away from casting $500,000 in Warzone.
That's insane, dude.
It's not insane. I haven't done a single 100k either. Like, I haven't done any of the World Series of Warzone stuff, any 100ks. It's only like the biggest ones I've done 2 or 3 50s. I've done 3 50s, I think.
Like,
wild,
how does
bro.
doesn't that feel weird to say stuff like that? Like, with some of the sometimes when you accomplish goals in this space, when you say them out loud and you've accomplished them, you're like, no, I didn't.
Yeah. No, it is crazy. I mean, I had set this like arbitrary goal in mind as a caster of like, once I got to $500,000 casted in Warzone, I would like at least more intentionally expand into other games like fairly rapidly. And that's still kind of the plan, but it's like weird that like I'm almost here already, especially with like the ramp up of events with Caldera. So it's been really cool. And then I've also been working on the Warzone earnings site. That's taken up a ton of my time. Have you seen the site, Doug?
Yes, dude. I was there for your tier list stream. It's wonderful.
Oh, right.
I'm glad that you put so much time into that. I actually have been meaning to talk to you like in private about it, and that you did a really good job. You made sure you had a good website designer. You made sure that your initial launch went well. Yeah. And it also is just formatted very well, very user friendly. And you went into a market that I kind of was worried was already filled, but it's like the same situation as me.
Yeah.
Everybody was like, Charlie Intel's already got this. What do we need you for? There's always a need for a new perspective and a new way to look at things. And that's exactly what Gojj's site does. If you look at it on screen right now, you'll see not only does it show you the earnings, but it shows you the tournaments they've played in, and it shows you when they played in them, who they played with, like all that type of stuff. And I'm sure he's only going to expand it more. And not only is it just like a player and the player's name, but it also has links to their YouTube, their Twitch, their Twitter, their TikToks. Like, this is very good for the creator community, as well as just for the spectating community to keep up with what's going on in the competitive Warzone scene.
Yeah, there's still a few like little quality of life things we want to do. It's technically in beta, but it's working very well for beta. There's a few little hitches and glitches, but it's like hardly even noticeable if you're not somebody that stares at it like 10 hours a week, or more than that, 20 hours a week. We've been putting in a lot of time to make sure we're on top of all the tourneys. But yeah, it's kind of wild because there's almost 500 names on this list. There's almost 500 people that have won money in Warzone of prize pools of 1,000 or more. It's crazy.
That is pretty insane. Me and Gojj actually competed in a hide and seek tournament together. We shared some of the highlight clips of that, and it was a ton of fun. Even though we haven't done a podcast, me and him have still been staying in touch and doing our thing. Wanted to catch you guys up, get you guys caught up a little bit to speed on what we've been doing since we've been a bit MIA. I've been doing my usual thing. Had something pretty cool today that I'll be able to talk about tomorrow. Other than that, I don't really have much to say about what I've been doing. I definitely have slacked off on YouTube a lot, and if you guys have seen that and have noticed it, feel free to call me out on it privately anytime. DM me, try to motivate me, get me to get back into it, because I do need to get back into it. But other than that, I think it's time to get into our bread and butter of tonight's conversations. And let's start off.
Let's do it.
First of all, what everybody's wanting to know about, and they'll probably find out more about it soon, but let's get started with the original reportings of Warzone 2 and everything that we know currently publicly about Warzone 2. Recently,
should we do an official start, Doug? Because we didn't even welcome everybody into the episode technically,
Oh yeah, true. We can do an official start, and we can just get right into it in that way. Facts.
I don't know. Maybe
it's been a while.
If you're listening on the podcast right now, and we didn't decide to edit out the beginning part, well, just you're gonna hear an intro later into the episode. It's gonna be great, so don't worry about it.
Here we go. We're gonna break it down right now. As always, Gojj is gonna bring us in.
All right, let's do it. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome into episode, I think, 19 of the Modern Warzone Weekly podcast. It is good to be back with you. I'm GrandmasterGojj, joined, as always, with the one, the only, Dirty Doug Dagnabbit, Mr. Modern Warzone himself. Doug, how are we feeling today?
Doing wonderful, my man. Had an absolutely blast of a day. How are you doing? It's been quite a while since we've been back.
Man, I'm doing fantastic, but I'm really excited to jump into our topics today because, Doug, I'm turning off the music for this. We're talking about Warzone 2 and the new season of Warzone on Caldera. I mean, we've got some serious big ticket items to talk about today, and I want you to kind of take us through some of this news that we've heard of about Warzone 2 and some things that are planned for the future.
I mean, it actually was pretty shocking the way it came out. We had just gotten over the whole shock factor of Microsoft buying Activision Blizzard. And then we get another big report from Bloomberg's Jason Schreier. You know, he breaks some of the biggest news in gaming. And I'm just going to get straight into it. He basically said that Warzone 2 is in development and it's being worked on right now. And that he said that it should be coming out sometime in 2023. We have our full article that we can pull up on the podcast for you guys.
Yeah,
this
sure.
is actually this is actually going to be a gaming intel article because, for good reason, Bloomberg News, when they do these big articles like that, they have them under their subscriber only thing, and I'm totally fine with that. You know, like, get your money. But we don't currently have a subscription to that, so we're gonna read the broken down version of it from Gaming Intel. It's actually not a cheap subscription either, or else I was gonna get it. And let's just get straight into reading it. Today, Bloomberg's Jason Schreier reported that Activision plans to launch Warzone 2 in 2023, and it's also coming to PlayStation. So this also kind of ties into the Microsoft acquirement of Activision Blizzard, and a lot of questions that people had. You know, was it going to be a Xbox and PC exclusive moving forward? And according to Jason Schreier, not yet, at least. He guaranteed and said that in internal talks between Phil Spencer and others within Sony, that they guaranteed past the contract's ending date, and that at least the 3 next Call of Duty titles will be available on PlayStation. But that's pretty much the extent of this article, you know? There wasn't a whole lot more information to go along with it besides, I mean, those are both 2 breaking news stories, you know? Warzone 2 is in development,
Right.
and that means it's a whole different thing. And there's a lot more to talk about that we can talk about that I've seen, but we don't have sourced references for, just because I didn't go and find them before we did the podcast. But there's other information that's been reported since this that adds on to the Warzone 2 story. But the big news about this, more so than anything, in my opinion, was that Microsoft had committed to make the next few Call of Duty games available on PlayStation. And I think that's a very good thing. And I never saw it going the other way. Personally, I still think that Microsoft could try to use owning Call of Duty and it being the #1 selling game on PlayStation platforms as leverage to force Sony into getting Xbox Game Pass in some capacity on their consoles.
Sure.
But that's like my big tinfoil take I've had for a while. What do you think about this news, Gojj?
It's an interesting news point because, you know, some of the conversations that you and I have been having about Warzone was like their projected timeline of Warzone was somewhere around like a 5-year timeline originally. At the very least, that's what we understood. So it's kind of funny, not funny, but interesting. I've said that like 6 times already because that's what it is, right? Like Warzone 2 is coming next year, 2023, which means everything that has happened with Warzone 1 and a lot of these, you know, whether it's changes, updates, etc., all the new guns from Vanguard, like all of that is going to go bye-bye. Like from what I understand, based on the way I'm reading this, it's like it's a whole separate game and we're not going to have 160 weapons to choose from in the new game. And I would assume that's going to drop a little ways into the Modern Warfare 2 drop. I mean, is that the way you understand it, Doug?
Repeat the last part one more time. I was Googling something.
No, yeah, I was saying like with the drop of Warzone 2, we would assume, like most people are assuming, I feel like, that it's going to drop a little ways into Modern Warfare 2 dropping, which means probably Modern Warfare 2 guns won't necessarily be implemented into Warzone 1 and they'll be held to implement into Warzone 2.
Yeah, see, that's part of what I was about to move into and what I was Googling is that the by definition, them calling it Warzone 2 means it's a separate game. It's going to have a separate launcher. You know, it's going to be on a, like, there. Oh, I got to be careful. It's going to be separate to a high degree, you know? And
Sure.
So the reports that came out about it, and I'm actually looking it up right now. The original report was from Tom Henderson. I know that for a fact. I have it right here. It says it. The first thing I Google, according to Tom Henderson, Warzone 2 will be released on PC in addition to PS5 and Xbox Series XS. So that's the first sentence of this. And the weapons of this game have no intersection with the previous game, and it will be a brand new game for the next generation. Tom Henderson has pointed out the Warzone 2 is planned to be released in 2023. Well, that wasn't Tom that pointed that out. That was Jason Schreier said that it was
Yeah.
expected to release in 2023. So that article is not exactly accurate. But I do remember seeing on my timeline that Tom kind of walked that back a bit and changed it. And then I found another article. Warzone 2 could be coming to last gen consoles after all. And then I have to read a bit more into it. It basically is just that Tom seems to be waffling back and forth between the two. And I think that it's really up in the air what happens with them right now. But the entire like community, like I'm sure Goj, me and you agree on this. Warzone 2 has to be a next gen experience. Like straight up. Like the whole thing
Yeah.
has to be next gen built. Like it needs to be for next gen consoles. That way they can have all the things they've been complaining about that they don't currently have. On top of
Yeah.
that, why call it Warzone 2 if it's not going to be a completely different experience?
Yeah. No, I think that's the big point, right? Like they wouldn't call it something else and it wouldn't be its own separate game if it wasn't if it was going to include everything else we've had in the past and it was going to be the same. I will be curious. I saw somebody in the chat in our YouTube live chat say it'd be interesting if it was an actual pay to play game rather than the traditional like free to play BRs that we're seeing. I can't imagine they do that because of how how much of a I'm forgetting the actual technical word for it, but I guess cash cow, if you can use that word correctly for this. I mean, Warzone has been a massive cash cow for Activision Blizzard, and so I can't imagine they wouldn't do free to play again. Even with all the microtransactions and all the skins and everything, like it is a big win. If you change the game to a pay to play, sure, you might find yourself with less hackers, but you know they've implemented Ricochet anti-cheat. Regardless of what you think of it right now, it's supposedly going to continue to only get better with the way machine learning works. And so they're certainly not going to do a pay to play in my opinion, but it could be possible. Who knows? I mean, they're going to be implementing all types of different things to make sure it's a different experience. And I think one of the biggest things is what you said is like they've got to build it out for next gen consoles so that next gen consoles are worth buying.
Yeah, and I actually found what Tom was saying when he walked it back a bit. This article right here says, after hearing more about Warzone 2, Henderson has since clarified what the outlook for the game is. As mentioned previously, Warzone 2 is being designed exclusively with next-gen consoles in mind. However, there's the possibility that a separate version of the game could be created for last-gen consoles. So to me, no disrespect to Henderson, but that sounds like uncertainty, and it sounds like taking a step back without taking a step back and just making sure if it's wrong that you're right, and that's okay.
Yeah.
You know, I look, trust me, it doesn't mean that he's making it up. Things change in a heartbeat in the gaming industry, especially when reports come out about certain things that may or may not happen. Like I'm actually aware at this point that me leaking the name of Call of Duty Vanguard and being the first person that came out way before their marketing plan to say that it was a World War II game had a huge effect on how they marketed it, how they talked about it, all types of stuff. Yeah, like there's serious implications that happen during that, and they will make snap of the fingers things to please people, you know. So
Yeah.
definitely something that could happen, but I do agree that it needs to be a next gen only thing. Like I'm serious. There's nothing wrong with staying on Warzone 1. Like honestly, like if you can't go to next gen or don't own a PC, I don't understand why you would cry and complain that you can't go to that you can't play Warzone 2. Like you have to understand that they're probably still going to leave Warzone 1 servers live. We haven't heard anything about them like killing those. Um, why would they not provide a better option in every way for people who do have the technology that can support it? So I'm all on board for Warzone 2. Goj, we've talked about on the podcast plenty of times. The initial 5-year thing, I'll be talking about this some more tomorrow, but the initial 5-year thing, it was always supposed to be just Warzone, you know? Like I've always said that it's just Warzone. It'll be Warzone. Every game will get implemented, blah, blah, blah. And I've conjectured before that after with the new Modern Warfare, that would be when they reset weapons and they get rid of the previous Modern Warfare weapons. So they'd only have about a cycle of 100
Yeah,
guns to handle. But it basically seems like they're like, nah, we're just going to scrap it all. We're going to build again on our new game that's supposed to be the best. I do remember that even though we do not have the Bloomberg article, we can't pull up the quote, that a lot of what Jason Schreier talked about was about how this is supposed to be the game that brings Call of Duty, revenue back to glory. Because Vanguard's not doing well financially. Um,
sure,
Cold War wasn't as good as Modern Warfare. Like, this is supposed to top Modern Warfare 2019. And to do that,
sure.
knowing that Warzone is a huge part of it now, it has to be a good game from the ground up. So I'm excited about Warzone 2. I know that last gen people might be upset, but I'm sorry, man. I know that this is my job and that I might have a completely different perspective than you. But honestly, this was the same growing pains. I remember because I was around 16 at the time or something like that, 15, 16, when Xbox One was introduced, and everybody started to have to make the move from an OG Xbox or a PS2 or a
Yeah,
PS3 to a PS4 or an Xbox One. And it's a big jump in price for what you've been used to. But at the same time, this growing pain is going to happen no matter what. And I do encourage you to, if you can get a non-scalped next gen console, to go ahead, because I think this whole pandemic thing slowed down the advancement towards next gen. But they're done with that. Like, it's time to move on to new
yeah.
technology.
Yeah, I'll be really curious to see if I mean, again, this is a year from now, right? Like a full calendar year, probably plus a little bit, right? And so you've got plenty of time to pick up a next gen if you are a console player and you don't want to play on PC. That's totally fair. That's just the reality of gaming. It's not that big of a deal over a year from now when things are slowly phasing out our old consoles. But I will be very curious to see what they decide to do with Warzone 2. Like we've said, it is going to be like a completely separate game from what we understand. But the question that I have is like, okay, could they, with new coding and everything and rebuilding the game from theoretically the ground up, could it be an opportunity to bring back some of our old maps and start throwing those in rotation, kind of like games like Apex does, etc., on the new Warzone? I mean, that would be really interesting to see what they decide to do. They've got a lot of options open. The doors are open for them to get really creative. The question is just what are they going to do? And we can only conjecture at this point. So interesting conversations. We'll, of course, keep you guys updated on everything Warzone 2. The more info we get about it, it'll be on every podcast episode, I'm sure, every other at the very least going forward.
We'll be talking about it for months.
Yeah, exactly. But Doug, season 2 of our current Warzone of Caldera, post Caldera, is here, and we were talking about earnings, of course, on Caldera. We were talking about how many tournaments are happening on Caldera. But season 2 content is here. Do you want to start taking us through some of the season 2 content?
Yeah, for sure. I don't know why my PC has Microsoft Edge open. I just need to delete that. Yeah. Basically, let's just give a preface real quick before we go into the details of it, and we pull up the actual patch notes and go through it point by point.
Sure,
let's just give a quick let's give a quick rendition of like what do we think. Like the roadmap was revealed, and that's the biggest roadmap they've ever done. Trust me, I tweet out every roadmap they ever do. That is the biggest one. There's 4 different categories, and there's like 20 different things. And if you zoom into it as much as you possibly can, it starts to look like it was taken by a toaster. The picture was. That's a ton of content, man. And it was a bit worrisome to me at first because of how many problems are in the game right now. But what did you think when you initially saw this and then read through the patch notes yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I think the big thing I noticed, there's a couple big ticket items. Of course, I am Warzone focused, so if people play a lot of multiplayer, zombies, etc., like you care about a lot of those things. But the first thing that my eye caught to was, of course, the Warzone side. So I at first saw new map locations, and I just about, for lack of a better term, shat my pants, because what I thought it was going to be was brand new POIs or brand new locations, more structures within Caldera itself, right? Like I thought they were going to build out new POIs in a lot of the quote unquote blank space in Caldera, or the green space, or whatever you want to call it, because there's a lot of that, more in Caldera than we had in Verdansk by quite a bit. And with the structure of Caldera, with all the POIs being on the outside of the map, a lot of that open space is the space that you have to rotate through when it comes to Warzone, especially when it comes to tournaments. It can be extremely frustrating. And so I thought they were going to add in all these new POIs. I was like, wow, I was not expecting this. And then I read into the patch notes, and we'll talk about this in a second. It's a little bit more of like a rebrand of certain areas. Now, there's some interesting things that come with that, but a little bit more of a rebrand. So that was the first thing. The second thing, of course, is new vehicles and new weapons, right? Like those two things are extremely important. The new vehicles, the bomber, which, Doug, if I'm remembering correctly, I think you talked about a long time ago, and I don't even know where you got that intel. Maybe it was just from some of the like trailers and stuff. But I think you talked about that like when the Caldera first dropped, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah, December 10th. I sent you the tweet if you want to pull it up.
Oh, yeah, I think I could.
On December
there it is,
10th,
right there. Boom.
On December 10th, this guy tagged me in a tweet, and it popped up as his message of the day in Warzone. And it talked about, the game itself leaked it.
Oh, that guy's name is Queeferson. I can't
I had to tweet that, and I was like, bro, I'm really going to have to do this. Because there was no, like, he was the only one I had seen with it, so... but anyways, like if you open up the picture and just look at what the picture says, I forget what it said, but I remember looking at it and it describes it as a transporter plane, whereas the other planes we currently have are fighter planes. So I didn't know if this was scrapped or what, but yeah, that's the same bomber plane that we're actually going to get. Like that's not the plane pictured here, but yeah, we are getting a bomber plane, and it has 3 gunner turret positions. I don't think it's been officially revealed about this stuff yet, but this is just what I've been told. 3 gunner positions, and then the pilot can drop bombs. And when the pilot drops bombs, the bombs can actually blow up loadouts.
Oh, I did see that. So we're going to get into the actual notes themselves. So last thing that stuck out to me, and then we'll go through the bomber, because that's game changing, to be honest with you, if you're playing the Vanguard mode. The last thing, of course, is the big ticket item for a lot of our viewers and a lot of people that like to watch content on YouTube. It is Rebirth Iron Trials, and a lot of mixed emotions with that, but I'm curious to see how that ends up playing out. I'll be very, very curious. That was my last thing. And then, of course, redeploy balloons and stuff like that on the search and deploy event. That'll be really fun, and we'll get into that as well.
Yeah, I talked about the Rebirth stuff a little early too, but my first thoughts when I looked at it was just, wow. After this bad state we've been in, look at all this shit that they're about to put in the game. That was my exact thought process.
You think it's going to be like invisibility stuff and like all that?
I was just like, Jesus Christ, bro. I mean, I'm still excited for all the new content, but I was a bit worried, especially about the original promo image, which you see right there on your screen, Call of Duty Vanguard Warzone Season 2. You see tanks in the background, I was a bit worried there was going to be a tank limited time mode in Warzone. I was trying to be open and optimistic about it, but boy, am I glad that did not end up being true. So it's only in Vanguard, but we're going to talk about that some more. We're actually going to get into the patch notes now. Basically, the first paragraph or so talks about the storyline, and one day we might do a whole COD lore storyline, but we're not even going to talk about that right now. Season 2, we have the roadmap. These updates will include blah, blah, blah. All right, so they break it down in bullet points right here for us just to start the thing off, and these are the big main points. New features, Nebula 5, which is gas. We'll get more into that. Redeploy balloons, which basically function like Apex Legends redeploy balloons. We'll get more into that and more. Nebula 5 ammo and bombs create new offensive tactics, while portable decontamination stations, basically a heat shield from Apex Legends, offer temporary refuge. Alternatively, take to the skies with redeploy balloons and bomber planes. Explore the chemical factory, which is one of the new POIs, which isn't really new. It's expanded upon, and we'll talk about that. And underground chemical weapon research labs, which actually are new. You couldn't access these before. And watch for armored transports. Wait till we talk about that in a minute. That's some interesting shit going on right there. Fresh points of interest in Caldera are here to shake up those rotations. Axis soldiers patrol these new areas and are found around the island in vehicles. Defeat them for powerful rewards. Axis soldier patrols is what you need to think about when we get into details on this. And then Caldera Clash at launch. Nobody really cares. Rebirth reinforced mid-season. A lot of people care, and I'm very interested to talk about that more in a minute. The massive team fight returns, rank up those weapons, and fight for Caldera outside of traditional modes. Meanwhile, there are rumors of a resurgence at Rebirth Island, and we're not talking about the game mode. So I'll let you go into the Nebula 5 ammo and bombs, Gojj, because that's actually an interesting mechanic I'd like to go back and forth about for a second.
Yeah, so the big question mark when it comes to all of these ads and upgrades and weapons and vehicles and stuff is it in Vanguard only mode, or is it in general Warzone period? Because when it comes, especially from my side of things, which is always tournaments, like what are actually going to be included in tournaments, and if they are included in tournaments, what are going to be banned? And we'll talk about like kind of what my thoughts are on that. But the biggest thing right here is that they're adding in new concepts that change the way the game is played, which I like. To be honest, we don't want to see the same old stale Warzone. We don't want to see the exact same game played over and over and over again, especially when you have a meta that is so redundant, right? You have the Brin and you have the MP40. If you're using anything else, you might be like kind of edgy if you're using the Owen, or maybe you're getting away with the automaton instead of the Brin, what have you. Regardless, it's a little bit redundant. And so when you start adding in new concepts and new ways to theoretically increase some sort of like lack thereof of a skill gap, Nebula, this Nebula ammo and bombs are a way to do that. So Nebula 5, or Nebula V, I would assume it's 5, is meant for larger scale armaments, but can be used for small arm ammunition and bombs, both found in extremely small quantities around Caldera. I would assume this is found kind of like stopping power was found, because stopping power doesn't exist in Caldera, and so this would be almost the replacement for that. And I like this replacement because it doesn't add damage like stopping power did, where it was almost impossible to even survive if one bullet hits you from stopping power. Instead, this is an opportunity to change the way these people are I guess the way you would entertain a fight. Let's just say it that way. It's technically a field upgrade in Warzone like stopping power. Nebula 5 ammo is no stronger than regular bullets, key point, but does have one major exception. When an operator is downed by them, they will emit a poisonous cloud. Now, to start, think about this, especially from a competitive side. This is huge, especially at distance. If you're able to down somebody and then they start shooting out a poisonous cloud around them, they're not probably going to get insta revived. And so this will allow for, on the competitive scene, the ability to push across greater distances, especially when you have a player advantage, right? That's the first thing that comes to my mind. Anyone attempting to revive this operator or standing within a few feet of them will face similar complications to the circle collapse. So this is the exact same damage as the gas from the outside circle, which also means that you could use a gas mask to get through this. So if you have a gas mask, you can start healing your person, you can start reviving them, but it'll start eating your gas mask away. So it's something to take into account. Another complication, another mental multiplication that you have to do while you're playing, especially from a competitive side. Blurred vision, coughing, all the classic stuff, and a little bit of damage over time, whether it's a player's health or the gas mask. It takes up only a single clip of ammunition and works the exact same way stopping power did, but for some weapons, it may be enough to turn the tide of a team fight, especially within interior spaces. It's a really good point. If you down somebody inside, able to back out of that fight, it can certainly change the way you address the rest of the fight and the way the rest of the team can even camp inside that area. Nebula 5 bombs, on the other side, are a little bit different. They're one of the rarest items in Warzone. The Nebula 5 bomb is a locked briefcase full of deadly gas with an explosive charge. Sounds kind of like a C4 to me. Once activated and set down in front of an operator, it will detonate after a fixed countdown and cannot be disarmed or destroyed. Its initial explosion deals a high amount of damage in a small radius before the gas spreads outward, where it'll hurt any operator without a gas mask, and it lingers for, let's say this out loud all together, 2 minutes before ultimately dispersing or feeding into the oncoming circle collapse. 2 minutes? That's
how
so
long some of the last circles last.
2 minutes. Keep that in mind as we start having some of these discussions. Operators can potentially outrun this explosive aftermath, just as they would the circle collapse. But in terms of an area denial tool, the Nebula 5 bomb is a powerful force if you can find it. Now, this is difficult to find. This is not like stopping power or dead silence. This is more similar or akin to specialist. It is difficult to find, but completely can be game changing if you find it, especially, once again, when we start talking about the competitive scene. If I'm thinking from the competitive scene with how RNG this is, I would have to conjecture that this will probably be banned out of customs. But I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe people will like that there's more like ways to play the game. 2 minutes is insane, though. I mean, can you picture a gas? It's not really a gas grenade because it's more of like the exterior gas, but a exterior gas lasting for 2 minutes. That's a long time.
I don't know how I feel about that one. I do kind of know like how I think I feel about the Nebula 5 rounds. I think that those won't be banned from competitive play. And
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
thinking from a a normal pub stomping or casual player's perspective, um, I think it's a great replacement for stopping power rounds. I never thought that they would even try to replace them, but honestly, I think that this it'll either go really good or it'll go really bad, obviously. But
Sure.
I could see it going really good because it heavily decentivizes holding hands and camping in one position. If it's a team holding a high ground on you and there's only one way up, which there's very few positions like that in Caldera. But if they're doing that on Rebirth in the tower or something and you down them, their teammates can't get them anymore unless they have a gas mask, is kind of what I'm getting from it, or else they'll take heavy damage throughout the revive process to where if you
Yeah.
put a bullet or two in them, it makes a big difference. And also, another thing I've tried to think about is if this will stack. Like, imagine this affects stacks. You get two or three guys downed in one room and their solo's the only one left to try to win the fight. And he can't even go in that room anymore. Like, it's instant death.
Yep.
I think that those are like really cool aspects to it. And I think that it shows that they're trying to make the gas mask a much more valuable piece of equipment.
Yep. I think at this point, right, like in general Warzone, you always have a gas mask. Like if you don't have a gas mask, you're doing something wrong. And this is a way to deplete that gas mask and start making you make more decisions. Again, when it comes to BRs, decisions are good. So if you have decisions between weapons, that's a good thing. If you have decisions on when to use certain equipment, that's a good thing. That's what we like about BRs because that adds a little bit of skill, a little bit of strategy. And so when it comes to like, you're dropping people with the Nebula ammo and there's people in gas and you're like, I could burn my gas mask to get this res off and it could work, but then I'm burning my gas mask. Is it worth it? Especially in the new stim era that we are in and with Caldera, a lot of fun decisions. The bombs will be really interesting. It sounds like they're very hard to find. So it'll be more of like if you find it, you should think very strategically on how to use it. It'll be amazing for in-game, might I add. Near in-game, if you can zone off an entire area where somebody has to go through it with a gas mask or stims to get to you and you can hear their coughing, like you can really protect your flank. Like there's a lot of different ways to use it. But in terms of zoning, like it said, that is absurdly good. And it does have an actual explosion damage that does a lot of damage on its first explosion. So you could try to time it with some of the zone closes and holding teams inside the gas. I mean, there's a lot of different options out there. The question will really be how long will it take to actually prime the detonation, and then how long is the countdown? And with those things in mind, that's when you're really deciding on how to use it.
So that's the one that I'm kind of iffy on. I honestly I think the Nebula 5 ammo itself and the concept is a very good thought process, the whole thing. And I think that everything you just described shows that it's not just a mindless addition. It legitimately changes the way any game can play out and changes your decision making and all those different things, both from the squad who has it versus the squad that's got a down guy from it. And I think stuff like that is interesting to continue to evolve the entire BR as a whole. When it comes to the Nebula 5 bomb, I do get a bit worried, but at the same time, this is what we haven't thought about. I can't think of which game had it. I think it might have been Fortnite, where you could throw a circle grenade, and it was like you could chunk the thing, and it made a big area that was basically like the circle. And this doesn't function like that at all, though. This is basically like planting a bomb and search and destroy. Like you're gonna have to make yourself vulnerable to a degree to be able to use this advantage for you. And not only it won't only advantage you, like it's not only a good thing for you, because what if you get pushed from the opposite side as soon as you activate said bomb? As soon as it detonates, you're getting pushed back into your own cloud you just made and your gas mask is up. Like there's so many different things that thing could cause that I do think with enough tuning it will find its place in Warzone. I don't think that they'll end up keeping it as like a search and destroy plant type thing, though. I think it should be a quick use utility weapon for a very limited amount of time, like 30 to 45 seconds, to force the team to move. I don't think it should be a 2-minute thing, because I could see somebody, and the only ways to get this, we're going to talk about this later, about the patrol vehicles and stuff, is very difficult. But I worry about teams saving it until the final circles and then the game becoming a stem fight like it already starting to become at high-end competitive. But at the same time, I do applaud them for actually, like adding something that seems to have a lot of thought behind it. And I heard you say you don't know if it's Nebula 5 or Nebula V, but it's definitely Nebula 5 because the gas, I used to say this is like one of my hot take tweets on Modern Warzone, but that the gas in Verdansk was Nova 6 from the zombie stuff. That gas was Nova 6.
Yeah, that
So
makes
this
sense.
is Nebula 5. This is the predecessor for it, or the
Yeah, that
the
makes sense.
ancestor. But yeah, and then there's also a whole nother thing we haven't talked about, Coach. Coach, go into the heat
Yeah,
shields.
that's what I was gonna say. We call it heat shield. If you've played Apex, you know what we're talking about. The portable decontamination stations, also known as the PDS. This is I love this ad. Again, when you talk about, and I'm going to quickly go through this, but when you talk about BRs, right, and you talk about them start adapting things from other games, whether intentionally or unintentionally, I never count that a bad thing. If you're always like, oh, Warzone stealing from Apex, I mean, shut up, right? Like, it doesn't matter. It's good. It's a good thing. There's things that Apex has that Warzone doesn't have that makes Apex a very competitive game. They have ALGS. I mean, Warzone doesn't have a pro scene technically. Like, there are reasons that Apex is starting to thrive even more and more now. And one of those reasons is they have a lot of innovative ideas. And the portable decontamination stations seem to act just like the heat shield from Apex. So if you don't play Apex, this is what they do. Despite its toxicity, Nebula 5 can be temporarily dispersed. The portable decontamination station, new field equipment, that's the same as like stopping power, dead silence in Caldera or like a trophy system, is a portable device that filtrates air for several seconds, protecting anyone inside the circle collapses or Nebula 5 gas. These devices impact all operator TAC maps, allowing everyone to see where they are currently activated, by the way, and they can be destroyed by explosives or ballistics. With these caveats in mind, the PDSs are still useful in surviving both old and new chemical threats and could likely lead to some new positioning strategies for Battle Royale modes. Totally agree with their conjecture. It will certainly change the way you rotate. However, especially from the competitive side, if you give away your position in the gas, when you throw one of these bad boys up, it shows on the map the gas is not in this circle. I can only imagine it's literally just going to be a circle that the map looks normal and the gas is all around it, right? It'll like carve out the gas if you're inside the actual gas itself or inside Nebula gas. This is extremely useful when you're trying to do big rotations and you're not worried about people knowing where you are. And I will also say it could be used for bait at a very high level, but at the same time, like several seconds is enough to allow you to plate back up, allow you to potentially, the big thing will be heal back up if you're dying in the gas from a late rotation or something like that, especially near end game. It'll just add more strategy to the way you survive and win fights at the end of the game in particular, but even throughout mid game. So I'm really excited about these because, again, it adds a bit more skill and a bit more strategy and more options.
Yeah, and I think that's like the whole. It almost seems like that's the whole incentive for the new seasons: new strategy, new options, new ways to move, new ways to not move. I'm really excited for it as well. I fully agree with your point about stop bitching about things that battle royale steal from each other because they've all stolen from each other the entire time. The only OG battle royale was an Arma 3 mod, so there's no reason to complain about that. But yeah, I really am looking forward to them just being added. And I do think that this also required a good amount of thought, not just a copy paste from another game. I'm not positive how it works in Apex because I haven't played it much lately. But I'm not sure if they show on the mini map on Apex when somebody has a heat shield up. But the fact that they do in Warzone is very important, first of all, because it's not going to protect you. Second of all, like Gojj said, it shows everybody on the map where you're at. They just need to look towards that icon and look for the guy. And you're already, going to be extremely compromised if they take out the portable station. And even more so if there's multiple squads around looking for that. Like, you're not going to be able to abuse this in the end game is how I
Yeah.
see it, to stay hidden. The way it currently works in Apex, based on the competitive I've watched from it and what I've played recently with the new season, is that heat shields mainly get used in like the first 3 to 4 circles because you're looting and you're getting in a couple of wide range fights, not seeing anybody for a second on Apex at least. And then when you do get engaged to where you're trying to go into a circle, instead of pushing into the circle and forcing a fight, you just heat shield and wait on them to get third partied. And then you make your way in and become the new third party. And I hope that's how it work on this game. but you really don't know because TTK difference is so different. We don't have a bunch of different skills and all these other things to rotate. But with the addition of the redeploy to balloons, I do think this is very cool. So we can keep moving through the patch notes to get to the
Yep.
redeploy balloons.
Yeah,
But
we can
next,
move a bit. I was just
what's
gonna
up?
say we can move a bit quicker since we got through the big ticket items. But I want you to talk about these ominous Nebula 5 machines of destruction, the armored transport trucks. Take us through this section.
I'm going to break us through this section and the new POIs in the same thing because they basically function in the same way. Armored transport trucks are here in Paradise as the Axis deployed multiple vehicles to carry Nebula 5 and its derivatives around Caldera. These unstoppable steel behemoths remotely roll on a set looping path, attacking those within its immediate vicinity with its 2 machine gun turrets. Operators also need to avoid the mines it drops behind it, as well as the aerial support it calls in should it drop to low health. Upon destruction, the armored transport trucks will drop incredibly valuable items, including, in the rarest cases, an intact Nebula 5 bomb. Okay, so the big important thing here to take from this paragraph about these is these unstoppable steel behemoths remotely roll on a set looping path. Okay, keep that in mind as I read about the next thing. New point of interest chemical factory. The refinery between the mines and the docks that once produced phosphate, blah, blah, blah. This newly named chemical factory has a similar layout to the location it replaced, but with several notable differences, including enemy soldiers who protect the facility. All right, keep that in mind with the remotely roaming transport truck we just talked about. And then let's move into the new stuff. Underground Chemical Weapons Research Lab. There's going to be 7 of these around the map. They're at the manholes that you've already seen. According to current intel, the Axis operated 7 research labs around the island, hiding them underground and guarding them with small squads of soldiers. So these are 3 different, completely different areas, completely different things that all are adding AI to the regular Warzone experience. I don't know what to say about it yet. What do you think?
Yeah, it's tough, right? Like at first you're like, okay, we've seen some battle royales in the past do this and do it to some limited success. We've seen Fortnite do it. There was like a Midas touch thing that was going on where they had AIs on one of the new maps, and then Apex has done it in the past with some AIs on the map. It makes sense to a degree. Now, I can't imagine these AI are like, you're not running into Almond with these AIs. Like, they're not going to gunny you down from 400 plus meters. They're not going to just annihilate you mid game, but they will be a nuisance if you're trying to take fights in this area, because it sounds like they will shoot you, including those armored trucks will shoot you on sight. So you have to be aware and keep that in mind in the area. But then there's like this big up of like, oh, well, the risk of fighting all these AI and giving away your position, if that's the way you want to think about it, also is the reward of higher value loot. So it could be a thing where people might want to drop here, grab the loot from underneath the AI, maybe kill a couple for that loot, and then leave. And so that increases the likelihood of people dropping in this area. If I remember correctly, these are like the mines just on the outside of Peak. So it's not going to be that much of a difference for a lot of these players to drop in this area, because you already go here quite often if you play fairly aggressive pubs. So it'll be interesting. I mean, technically Warzone's had AI on the map before. They had the whole zombies thing going on that was fairly not that well received necessarily. It was really hard
Plaza.
to do. Nakatomi Plaza was another thing. So this isn't like insanely nuanced for Warzone. They've done it before. I'll just be very curious to see like how many will actually be in the area and how deadly they will be, how annoying they will be, or is it more of like, oh, they're there, I'm gonna grab the loot and leave.
Yeah, they're basically adding something we've already seen before, but they're doing it at 3 locations at the same time, which makes it kind of sketch. At the same time that this armored transport truck might only be, how they call them the supply choppers or whatever towards the end of the game, or they'll shoot you or something. They'll just be annoying. It could be like that, but it could also like absolutely shit on you. Like, we don't know yet. It says when it gets at low health that it'll start calling in airstrikes or aerial support. So that's where things get kind of sketchy. But it also is listed as one of the only ways to get the Nebula 5 bomb. The high value loot is going to make players go to these locations no matter what. But the interesting part to me is that the underground chemical weapon research labs are basically going to function like some of the more primitive bunkers in Verdansk. And if you're familiarized with what I'm talking about, you'll know that there was only one way in and out of bunkers in Verdansk, and that's the same way for these. And that's why you saw clips of a guy with an ATV running over an entire squad trying to run up a staircase, is because there's only one way in and out, and sometimes you just got to get out. I think it'll be interesting. I think that the underground chemical weapon research labs, I think they might have gone a bit overboard by putting AI in those areas. Like, I think if you take the risk to go into a one way in, one way out area, you shouldn't have to alert the entire map to you doing so. So I don't think those will be received as well, especially because it also says that thanks to several hand-drawn yellow circles on their TAC map, you'll be able to know where they are. So it's not it's not like if you're a sweat, you know about it, or if you keep up with news, you know about it. It's everybody's going to be told these are here. They're going to find a hole and they're going to drop down it and see, oh my God, this is the best loot ever. And this is going to be their new favorite hot drop location, because they're going to tell all their friends that they had a loadout in 2 seconds. So I don't really think those are going to be well received. I do think the factory will work out well, in my opinion. It's a perfect layout to have AI in my opinion. And I think that the transport trucks I don't think people are going to like them.
Yeah, I think like anytime there's a big vehicle that can just blast annoying damage at you, especially if it's going to be Nebula focused, it's going to be a problem, right? Like, I think people are going to get frustrated with that. But yeah, that is a funny point that you made. It even says on here, like, of course, it's one way in, one way out, but threatens your chances of walking away with phenomenal loadout items, which may include gas mask and Nebula 5 ammo. Like, these are going to be extremely valuable, especially when you're trying to fry out in pubs and things like that, and you play aggressive games. I could totally, like, you're right. I could totally see these bunkers, depending on where they're at, being a lot more of an aggressive drop. I mean, I remember even the bunkers in Verdansk, right? There was one on the very southwest side of the map that was over by what was that POI? Hills?
Are you talking about prison, or are you talking about the big bunker that had the nuke in it? That was bunker 10 that had the nuke in it.
Yeah. Yep. That one had a ton of loot in it, and it became like this weird outside of the map hot drop. But the thing is, like you said, they're all denoted on the minimap. And there's 7 of them. So the ones that are going to become hot drops are the ones that are more centrally located around peak and otherwise, where people already are hot dropping and people are used to dropping. I would assume some of the bunkers that are in that area might become a new hotspot instead of just dropping on the top of peak every single time. So I'll be curious to see what happens with those. But there's another big thing like happening. Again, I'm excited about changes, regardless of whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. At least they're experimenting with a ton of stuff, right? Like and changing the way the game is played, because the next piece is massive. We mentioned the bomber planes already, and the redeploy balloons are probably the thing I'm most excited about when it comes to a general BR, especially at a competitive level.
Yep. And just before we fully move on from the last topic, I did say that there's only one way in and one way out, and that was a similarity between the old bunkers and the new bunkers. There's also other bunkers that we don't know about yet. They're probably Easter egg related in the future. But this current one, like, I believe it's a ladder. So honestly, if this is supposed to be a hot drop spot and it's a ladder, it don't matter it doesn't matter what the fuck you loot down there. If I sit on top of that ladder, I'll beat you to death before you climb up it. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't think those are going to go well unless they figure out it needs to be a staircase. Like, even the staircase with the bunkers was penalizing, but a ladder, I don't know about that. Manholes are typically a ladder. But yeah, well, let's move on to the bomber plane, because this is one of the craziest things I've ever seen.
Okay, to clarify, this is Vanguard only playlist for the bomber for sure.
Man, yeah, it is for sure. Funnily enough, one of the devs that I follow and used to talk to sometimes, not some guy who like leaked me things, I just talk to sometimes, because he did like the tracer pack rounds for a lot of the Modern Warfare weapons. Like, I remember he tweeted back and forth with me about like the flower petal rounds and stuff when I tweeted about him. And he recently moved from Raven Software to Infinity Ward, and he tweeted today that the bomb explosion like effects are the last thing he worked on for Raven, and he's been moved on to Infinity Ward for a while. So that tells me they've been working on this fucking bomber. They've been working on the bomber plane for a minute, bro. Oh, but it is cool. So let's just talk about it for a second. Let's just talk about it for a second. Yeah, you read it, dude. It's fucking
I'll read it.
good.
The second aerial vehicle in Vanguard modes in Warzone, the Bomber is a formidable air-to-ground striker capable of leveling infantry and vehicles. Bombers can also, ding ding ding, destroy loadout drops. What? Which can fundamentally change how operators approach these powerful sources of weapons. While this new aircraft can shatter anti-air guns as well, keep that in mind, and destroy ground-level threats, it may meet its match when confronting the fighter plane, which continues to be available in Vanguard Royale. Alternatively, drop into a stationary truck or a truck-mounted AA gun and bring down these airborne behemoths with vim and vigor. Yeah, there's an exclamation point there. Furthermore, players can expect to see health decreases to both planes as a part of this update, making them easier to shoot down should they pose a threat to you or your squad. Look, if you're a big fan of Vanguard only mode, I'm sorry. Like, this is going to be a menace. Because the problem, here's my issue, right? Their counter are two things that most people already don't either touch or don't care for, right? The planes are crazy good. So decreasing the health of them, like the fighter planes, is a good thing. They already have like auto aim, freaking engine owning looking chicken McNugget aim where you can lock onto people, even though that got nerfed. And people are dropping 60 kill games with the planes. Now you add in a whole new ball game, right? You add in the bomber plane that can take down loadouts. Dude, Vanguard only mode, it's gonna be a dogfight. What is this, Battlefront 2, like space mode? Like, this is a different game, bro. If you're playing Vanguard only, you're gonna have a good time. Competitive scene is staying away from this stuff.
Yeah, I think so as well. I think this is going to push the competitive scene away from it. And I personally like Vanguard Royale because I don't like going up against old game weapons. Like, I do like playing with the World War II guns. I know that's like a really hot take, but I do enjoy playing with the new guns. There's some stuff I'm going to talk about tomorrow in my whole thing that has to do with this to a degree. But I agree with what you said, that the two counters on the map are not strong enough at all. First of all, the first counter is you need to be able to fly the plane your fucking self. A lot of people can't do that. Second of all, the AA guns are too thin and too spread apart, and the planes can easily destroy them. And not only that, but when you get on an AA gun, you basically tell everybody around you, hey, guys, I'm the type of player who takes the time to try to shoot down planes in the AA gun, even though they might never fly by. And you like pop up on the mini map like a vehicle and everything. Like, they need to fix something about that.
Well, yeah, and I think like the big thing also to remember is like, again, this is, I feel like they started Vanguard only mode as like, it didn't feel like a competitive mode, of course, but it felt like the game mode everyone wanted to play because they were tired of fighting against the freaking OTS, right? Or whatever, like all of our old guns, right?
Yeah.
EM2, etc. And so everybody was kind of catering towards the Vanguard mode. And even in the tournament scene, everybody's like, yeah, the only guns available are the Vanguard weapons, right? And so, and a big point here from Quirky in the chat too is like, everyone was using a sniper in the normal mode because the Modern Warfare snipers and even the Cold War snipers were the guns that you want to use, especially in Caldera where there's this much open space and high ground. Snipers are absurdly populating that area. Modern Warfare sniper, although it got a slight buff, you just throw the focus perk on it and it works the same way. Like, no flinch or anything. Swiss, of course, is still amazing. Like, there was a reason everybody was playing Vanguard only. But now when you start adding in these type of elements, which sound really fun, like, I want to play in this game mode, but not on a consistent basis, especially not pumping out crazy high kill games. This feels like now a more casual, fun game mode, whereas the traditional Warzone is the more sweaty mode, if you can say it that way. Not everything has to be a tournament, but you know what I mean. And so it started as like, hey, all the sweaty players want to play Vanguard because you're not fighting against the old weapons. And it's becoming more of not necessarily a plunder type mode, but more akin to that. Like, you can't run some sort of competitive tournament or like really sweaty 2v2s in this new mode with all of this just craziness, although it sounds fun. And to their point, to Activision's point, right? Like, not everything surrounds the competitive mode. Not everything surrounds the sweaty streamer. The casual player is always in mind. So this makes sense from the back, like a kind of a bird's eye view of that, if that was conveyed properly.
Yeah, I agree with you. Just the entire switch, like it's going to be like a flip flop. It's going to be like the Democrats becoming the modern day Republicans type thing, you know. Um,
Okay, okay.
that was deeply
That's good.
political. Sorry, but
No, it was.
yeah,
I mean, not really, but
I know, but most people won't even get the reference. That was kind of nerdy. Um, but yeah, I'm really it's hard for me to talk about it because when I look at it, I'm like, bro, I can't believe this shit made it out. But at the same time, like it could be a lot of fun. Like I could see some great content coming out of just trying to fly a bomber the whole game type shit. But
yeah,
as
no,
long as they're less
again,
maneuverable than a fighter, and as long as the AA guns can do their job and not get taken, like I've seen a game, I think I saw it on YouTube, where one of the guys who flew the plane, like to win the whole game, flew around the whole map and destroyed every AA gun. And then all you have is AA trucks. And there's not that many of those, and they drive like crap. Like there's so many different small things that have gone into making the planes as strong as they are that I'm very glad that this is only Vanguard Royale. Praise the Lord. I'm excited to move on to the next one. I know you want to talk about it. Go
yeah,
ahead.
let's get it. Yeah, redeploy to balloon. And shout out to all our casuals, by the way. Obviously, I'm very competitive mindset because that's all I do. Cast an absurd amount of Warzone, but casual players, you're gonna have fun with that, and I think I will too, to be honest. Redeployed balloon. This is a big one. Shown on the TAC map as a blimp icon, the redeployed balloon is a ticket back into the skies to reposition thousands of meters away from your set location. I mean, round of applause. Honestly, I'm maybe there's somebody out there that isn't excited about this, but I am. One of my favorite parts about the way Apex works is that your rotations can change based on what is going on in the map and the resources that you have, whether it's the heat shield, which we now have as well, or the redeployed balloons, which might even be called the same thing or something similar, the balloons in Apex. This is a way to shoot back up to the sky and start flying. Now, the only real way to fly across this map and reposition in a fairly quick and aggressive manner without a vehicle is essentially flying off the top of peak. So this is certainly going to allow you to move interior of the map a lot quicker, and big point, especially from my side of things, rotate through those wide open spaces in a much more efficient and less stressful manner, right? If you can use a redeploy balloon to fly in to the area you're trying to get to rather than running out in the open, you know, amongst the ferns, like this is such an advantage for players that are trying to get to the middle of the map, and an opportunity for players to not get held on the outside of zone. As the zone's coming, you hit that redeploy balloon, you go flying in. I'm so excited about this. So the technical definition: operators can ascend to the top of a balloon via a zip line tethered to the balloon, then leap off at the top and deploy their parachute to cover great distances. Planes or weaponry can destroy the redeployed balloons, by the way. That's a little bit different from Apex if you play it. And once the balloon is deflated, operators can spend a few $100 to re-inflate it. I would assume it gets deflated after it's used once. So if you go and try to use it again, you will have to spend some money, which is an interesting concept. I like it. Resource management is always a good thing. You know, it's exceptional for repositioning across the map, so long as you watch out for bogeys entering your airspace.
Is that what you got from that? You think that it'll only be like a one-use thing and then you have to pay?
Yeah, that's my guess. I mean,
when I initially read it, go ahead.
Oh no, maybe it's if you destroy it, then it's deflated. That could be it.
Yeah, that's what I get from it, because in the same sentence they talk about players can shoot it down with a plane or their weaponry. So I think the only way it goes down is if a team strategically tries to take it out, which would be very interesting. And another cool point about it for comp is that, you know, if you have a team held and you know that balloon is their only way to get by you without being in open space, you could just grief that balloon and just they're gonna have to go run up to it, wait on it to reinflate, and then try to use it again. Just shoot it again. So that makes it not OP at all. I think that this is one of the best additions to Warzone since it came out.
Couldn't agree more.
Straight up. One of the best. I don't see a downside to this. You can get upset that people are rotating quicker and that's not a real BR, blah. Who cares? We all know now, after seeing what happened to the loadout change and Caldera being slower paced, that people love this game for the pace. This is only going to improve the pace. This is only going to transfer to you getting in more meaningful engagements that don't feel like you had no chance. This is going to mean that you're going to drop on a squad and you get to fight them instead of being stuck trying to climb up a hill as the guy shoots you in the top of the head when you can't even see him.
Right.
I'm
I
so
think,
excited about it.
Yeah, I think if there's people out there that disagree, I would be really curious to hear what your thoughts are. So if you could tweet at either Modern Warzone or GrandmasterGojj on Twitter, I'd be extremely curious to hear what your thoughts are on the actual redeploy balloon. We'll take a look at those at the end of the episode. We're going long today, by the way. We're already over an hour, and I love it. So we'll keep going through these notes. But this one is huge. I saw, again, Corky talking in the chat about rotations, especially in customs. If these are included as an option in customs, this is a huge, huge boon for the competitive scene. Anything that can decrease the RNG of the game is good when it comes to strategizing, at least to some degree. And this is certainly one of those things that can do that and increase the skill gap in ways that you could rotate, etc. So big ad, excited about it. Looking forward to seeing that implemented. New modes. Caldera Clash kicks off Season 2. Rebirth Iron Trials Duos, by the way, set to begin. We'll briefly go through this because we have been going a little bit long.
Yeah, Caldera you can skip Clash. This one if you want. Honestly, I don't think anybody cares.
Pits 2 teams of 48 operators divided into quads into a death match. We've seen this before in Verdansk. It's cool to have it back. It's a great way to warm up if you want to do that instead of plunder. I'm not too mad about it, to be honest. Next, Rebirth Iron Trials. Prove your presence later in this season. So when it comes to Iron Trials, a lot of people from the what I would call the streamer community and the competitive community loved it. I saw some casual players didn't like it as much, which is fair. It's literally says it's a Rebirth Iron Trials is a battle royale variant custom made for highly competitive players. If you're a casual gamer, you might not enjoy it. Now, featuring its own set of weaponry from Cold War, might I add, and numerous rule changes to increase time to kill, this mode is built for the most hardcore members of the community. The big thing here, though, Doug, that I wanted to talk about with you is that this is duos. 20 squads of 2 for 40 operators total, traditional Rebirth numbers. And you use a similar circle collapse size and speed. The thing about this, Doug, is it Resurgence?
See, that's the thing. Nobody knows yet. If you had to ask me, based on a little bit of insight, maybe a little sugar and spice and everything nice, I don't think it's Resurgence. I also think the wording heavily conveys that it's not Resurgence because they talk about Battle Royale. I also think that if it was Resurgence, they would have announced it as a big change to the way Iron Trials would work. And I also don't think that Iron Trials would work well at all with Resurgence. Can you imagine the hand holding with 400 health?
Yeah. I will be curious to see how this is responded to. I get the intention. So let's talk about the intention, right? It's to bring Iron Trials. It's to bring Iron Trials back into the game in a different way than we had it last time. Technically, I don't think we've had it, obviously, in Caldera yet, but into Rebirth, where more people are playing Rebirth, more viewers are viewing Rebirth. This could be cool, right? Like, this is a fun thing. Like, I think of, people that really enjoyed Iron Trials. The first person that comes to mind is Iceman Isaac, right? He raved on and on and on about Iron Trials. I saw him do so many runs as a solo in Iron Trials, and it was super fun to watch because you can make even more crazy outplays, etc. But the mentality of the general player when it comes to Rebirth Island is Resurgence, right? And so when you take away that aspect of Rebirth, people are going to be less excited about anything you add to Rebirth if it's not Resurgence. I mean, you and I had the conversation the last couple episodes on the podcast about how Rebirth and Resurgence are now hand in hand. There's really no differentiating them. Nobody plays Rebirth Island as a BR anymore. It's a Resurgence game. It's a completely different game, different strategies, etc. So you have to retrain the players' minds to think of this as, hey, here's another way to play Iron Trials, not another way to play Rebirth. It's totally different because Resurgence is not a thing. So I could see some of our more Caldera streamers and Caldera players going and trying Iron Trials on Rebirth, but I don't see a lot of our Rebirth players getting excited about this, which may have been the intention, and we just missed a little bit along the way. But hey, who knows? We'll see how the community reacts to it. That's my first impression, just based on the way the Rebirth community works right now.
Yeah, I strongly feel that it won't be Resurgence, which is sad to me because when I tweeted about it like a week ago, that I had heard about it, and I mean people have talked about it before then, so I'm not trying to claim it or anything, but I was very confused at the same time. I was like, bruh, we're not going to try this on Caldera first. We're going to go straight to Rebirth. And I mean, people say what they want about the Twitter polls, but I noticed that they kind of seem to go along with what Call of Duty is doing based on like the general consensus of the audiences in my Twitter polls. But I totally get that they're going to Rebirth. I just don't, I agree with you. I don't know if it'll work well, and it may even rub people the wrong way who haven't gotten into Iron Trials yet. And I
Right.
don't like that thought process at all.
Well, and
I get it for testing and getting data and stuff to, like figure out how fast a game goes,
Yeah.
blah, blah, blah. Like how much damage did you take versus how much, like, bro, tomorrow, I can't wait to talk about tomorrow. They have so much data at that place. It's insane. So this is, in my opinion,
we'll talk about
this
it.
is 100% to collect data, to figure out what they really want to do for ranked. They want to figure out what it's like in a close range, small map scenario, as well as in a big map scenario. They want to figure out what the play differences are and see if they can consolidate that into one experience, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that makes sense too. I just, knowing the Rebirth community as well as I feel like I do at the very least, I can't imagine this is received well by the Rebirth community. This is certainly a way for people like the Iceman Isaacs of the world that don't play a lot of Rebirth to come in and play the Rebirth map to play Iron Trials. But you're not going to play the Rebirth map like you usually do. It's a completely different game, which is denoted in the language here in the patch notes. But still, it's a completely different game, and you've got to play it just in a totally different way if you're going to try to have fun with this game mode. That's my opinion. We'll keep moving on, though. I think that's most everything, right?
That's it. We just have to talk about the changes to Rebirth that are coming, but this is a very important thing to note from the Rebirth Iron Trials part is expect more information to come later this month when these Iron Trials are expected to begin in Warzone. So if you've been keeping up with things, you will have noticed that Raven Software has been putting out playlists a month ahead of time. So if we're not going to find out about, I don't know, the wording of this confuses me. It says, expect more information to come later this month when these Iron Trials are expected to begin in Warzone. So if they're beginning, we should find out as soon as Season 2 starts when they will be. So just keep that in mind, that we should get the playlists that are coming. We are on our current last week of playlists that they had to add because they delayed Season 2. As soon as we get Season 2, we should know what we have up until mid-March, which is crazy to say. I'm so glad that they started doing that.
I agree. And something else to mention in here, I know a lot of people have talked about this on the timeline and talked about the excitement around this idea. Season 2 will also include a number of quality of life changes, including ding, 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 having the gas mask animation no longer interrupting operators who are aiming down sights. Big W. We don't have to talk about that as much now because it's something that'll come up later as Season 2 kind of gets added. But those kind of quality of life upgrades are a lot of the things that the community have been wanting over the last, at least some odd 6 months or so, honestly. Even 2 months, of course, of Caldera drop.
There's a lot more coming.
Yeah, we'll talk more about that later, Doug, because we can't talk about it right now. So stay tuned. Doug, we've hit most of our topics tonight, haven't we? Have we walked through everything?
We did. I think we kind of did a little bit of disservice to this Rebirth update because, I mean, they show a picture here and they're calling it Rebirth reinforced. So I would hope to see that it's a big change because the way that they're acting about it, it seems like a big change. I would hope it's not just a couple little things here and there. But other than that, I mean, we've covered everything you could possibly want to know about Season 2, at least until tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and then there will be more stuff about Season 2. But right now, that is everything. And honestly, we need to make this a thing we do for every patch note, Coach. W or L? I'm giving it a W.
Oh, I like that. I W 100%. Anytime Activision Blizzard is willing, or Raven Software or whoever is willing to make some changes and change the way the game is played in not in a absurdly dramatic way, but offer up new ways to play the game, specifically with the big map Warzone, I am here for it, to be honest. There's just no way. Like the more updates, not the more updates the better, but to some degree we want a new fresh experience and a new way to play the game. And I'm excited to see that they are certainly doing that with all these updates. The question is what's going to stick, what's not going to stick, what's going to be included on a general level in Warzone, and what's going to stick to only Vanguard Royale. And I guess only time will tell for some of that.
Yeah, I give it a W as well, specifically because every single thing that we went through tonight wasn't just like we're scratching our heads, you know? Like everything was like,
Yep.
okay, this is cool. This makes sense. It might work. It might not. You know, everything about season 2, including the fact they delayed it to fix a lot of issues that were going on all throughout the game, before they added all this content, has shown me that we are trending back towards Warzone being good. And even if it's not everything people expect it to be, they're trying to evolve it into something better than what it was yesterday. And I'm totally on board for that. It's going to take a long time before anybody ever has a perfect battle royale, but this is a trending in the right direction. I'm very excited about the new ways to use a Nebula 5 bomb to maybe push a team out. Redeploy balloons, probably the biggest W of the whole update, to be honest. Bomber planes probably will be the biggest L of the update. But everything involving Nebula 5 gas, I don't know yet, but I am really excited, and I don't think there's a problem with them trying it. And I do think the portable decontamination station, regardless of what happens with Nebula rounds or the bombs, will be a great addition to Warzone moving forward. So I give it a W. And if we were to go off of like I watch a guy named Penguin Zero or Critical Moist. I don't know how everybody refers to Charlie, the famous YouTuber, but I watch him, and he has a series where he reviews things, and he it's always called the Moist Meter as to how he rates something on a review. I would give this a 75 out of 100 on my Moist Meter. Like you don't have me fully peaked yet, but you do have me hopeful. All right, you have me hopeful that things are going to get better, but I'm not hype. I am happy though, and I haven't been happy to talk about Warzone in 3 weeks.
Yeah, no, hey, that's part of the reason we haven't seen as many uploads from our channel, but I am excited once again. I'm excited to continue to post more episodes and all of that good stuff. We didn't even really take a mid-episode break to talk about anything else outside of the streams and everything. So thank you guys for the support. I guess that's kind of where we're at. But hey, YouTube, thanks for being here. If you guys don't know, if you're on the podcast right now and you guys enjoy this episode, we do have a YouTube where you can watch our beautiful faces and look through the patch notes with us and all the tweets that we talk about. I pull them up on stream, and it's really simple. It's youtube.com/C/Modern Warzone Weekly. And of course, shout out to our Twitter space fam. I see Elvis Cott over there and others. Big congrats on 10K followers, by the way, Elvis. Thank you guys for supporting us over on the Twitter spaces as well. Fun to see you guys on multiple platforms, but YouTube is where we honestly can make money and support the show. So if you guys will go support the YouTube, subscribe, like the video, all of those good things, that'll be very helpful because we are a YouTube partner now. So we are monetized, which is super exciting. Well, hey, Doug, I know we're looking forward to putting out more episodes very quickly to end this one up. Anything that you are working on, shout out your socials, all that good stuff, and then we'll finish.
Tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I will have a YouTube video as well as multiple tweets, as well as potentially multiple articles coming out about things that you can look forward to, and new information that hasn't been seen anywhere else yet about things involving Warzone. So I'm looking very much so forward to that and talking about that with you all. And honestly, it's so much to go through that I'm a bit worried to make my video tonight, but it was probably one of the coolest things I've ever taken part in since I started Modern Warzone. So I really am excited to share all that with you guys. But Gojj, what do you got going on, man?
Yeah, and by the way, a quick shout out to everybody everywhere that's listening. We might be doing, probably we'll be doing a bonus episode tomorrow after that embargo lifts, that Doug can talk about the things that he's been able to experience, and I'll be basically doing like an interview style with Doug to talk about all of those different topics, because I know a lot of people are excited about all the lots of stuff that he can't talk about. I don't even know it yet, which is crazy. So he can't tell anybody anything. So the plan is 1 p.m. or so Eastern time tomorrow for that. But in terms of me, GrandmasterGojj, all major socials, there's a chance actually, Doug. Holy crap, Doug. This is not that big of a deal, but it is for me. I just broke 6,000 followers on Twitter during this episode, which is super exciting. So
hell yeah, guys, bro.
Thank you guys for the support. I appreciate that a ton. No, I've been grinding heavy in the competitive scene, man. So many tourneys, casting a ton of events. Like I said at the very beginning of the episode, which we may or may not leave in the actual audio recording, I am less than $25,000 away from casting $500,000 in Warzone. Without a single 100K event, which is crazy. Over 45 some odd events. Super honored to be able to do that many events for Warzone and that much prize pools, and really excited about the future as well of Warzone. And so thank you guys for the support on that. Thanks for gassing me up. And I've been really proud to be able to cast so many events, and looking forward to more events this month as well. So again, I think that's it. I think that's all I've got. I've just been casting. Oh, and the warzoneearnings.com. If you haven't checked out warzoneearnings.com, we put together this website. Me and I'll shout him out, Del Tara. You can find him on Twitter. An amazing web designer who put together our warzoneearnings.com. It is updated as of February 8th for all tournaments that have happened on Caldera. And you can see some of the absurd numbers of Almond winning $66,263.33 on Caldera in 2 months. Crazy. So go check it out if you want. There's a lot of people, a lot of data. It takes a lot of hours to keep track of all the absurd amount of tournaments. So go check that out, warzoneearnings.com. But I think that's it, Doug. Thanks for joining me on the episode. Thanks for doing what you do, keeping the people updated, and looking forward to the future, man.
Yeah, it was a great episode, man. Thanks for coming on. It's been good to be back. There was so much that we just hadn't talked about recently, but I'm glad to be back, and I'm very proud of you, man. Starting your own website and getting your own thing going like that, it might not seem like it's worth it in the beginning, but brother, the way that website looks, you got something on your hands right there. Keep working on it. It's wonderful to see you jump into the new space.
Thank you. I appreciate that a ton. Well, hey, Twitter Space, that's all we've got. We'll go ahead and end this. Audio recorders, I think we're out of here. YouTube, everybody, thanks for being here. We'll see you guys in the next one.
Have a good one, y'all.
Peace.
Boom.